Today's episode is Shades of Grey, probably the worst episode of The Next Generation. As usual, each episode starts with 100 points, taking away 1 point for error, and we're gonna take a lot of points today. If you're wondering, this is how they got the name of the episode.
It's called Shades of Grey, because I really don't feel like there's any black and white, only shades of grey.
The first point is lost for this being a flashback episode. Another point is lost for having a flashback episode as the season finale. With just 2 seasons and the loss of 2 female leads and a shorter season due to the writer's strike, I was convinced this meant the series had been cancelled. Minus 1 point for the white bar that always shows up at the end. 1 point is lost for only 2 of them going down to the surface. Geordi is the engineer and Riker is the first officer, so where is the science crew? You get to see Dr. Pulaski's true feelings about getting in the transporter. She probably watched The Fly. O'Brien's joke about transporters didn't go over very well, did it? Dr. Pulaski always travels to the surface with her boombox. This is what she asked Deanna Troi in the first episode. And this, of course, is the moment you've been waiting for. Dr. Pulaski performs the Picard maneuver. Yes! Minus 1 point for not having Diana Muldaur listed as a regular. After all of Riker's fooling around, he finally caught something that won't go away. Picard accuses him of getting that virus with his foot. Riker says he did it with Dr. Pulaski. This is getting weird. However, the commentary is much more cutting edge than the actual show. The show is really bad. Pulaski says it's a bacteria virus, which means she doesn't know what it is. Minus 1 point for opening credits 6 minutes into the show. The organisms are making his nervous system go numb, and then he's going to die. Aww. 1 point lost for not being down with a security or science team, and another point lost because they are much closer together when they arrived. That's how Tuvix was created. Geordi says, "Be careful." Data says, "I always use protection." It turns out this planet is covered with plants that act like Venus flytraps. They poison I'm gonna kill that dog. They poison live animals and then absorb the corpses. Gotta take 1 point off for Wesley not being on the show and 1 point off for Worf not being on the show. After all, this is the season finale. Of course, the 2 of them are off eating giant fish. And they figured out what the vines do real quick. It turns out all this time Riker has been faking his orgasms. Dr. Pulaski also uses this tool to look for lost change on the beach. Now is the time for long, boring Captain First Officer talk. This unnamed extra claims he's a Riker too. As usual, the Star Trek crew never follows the teachings of Yoda. Riker says that as first officer of the ship, he has to set the example and celebrate Pride Month. And I'm going to finally take a point this year for Deanna wearing a cat suit and not the standard uniform. And there goes Riker. Yes! The next point is lost for not rolling up his pant leg where the infection is. That's the first thing a doctor would do. According to the stardate, about 2 hours have passed. Dr. Pulaski has waited an entire year to use her neural neutralizer. 1 point is lost though, since it's highly unlikely technology in the future will drill through the skull. That's dangerous enough now. Besides, if he moves just the slightest, those probes will cause even more damage. 1 point is lost for excessive Deanna cleavage. Deanna sings her favorite song from the 60s, but changes the words. Dr. Pulaski uses technobabble. Minus 1 point for the first flashback. I'm going to take a lot of points on this show. Minus 1 point for Data's poor makeup. If they're going to do flashbacks, they need to use the ones that don't have the problems. Minus 1 point for Riker thinking Data is not an actual officer. Minus 1 point because this is the wrong year. Minus 1 point for the stars in the background not moving. And Riker and Wesley perform the Riker maneuver and the Picard maneuver. Wait, are they talking about cocaine here? This is flashback number 4, so minus 1 point. 1 point is lost for the show not using the ship as Riker's brain. That worked perfectly in Dark Beige and would have been an excellent show here with Riker being attacked by monsters in the hallway. 1 point is lost here since this would not be in Riker's memory. See, he just came around the corner. Minuet. Aww. 1 point is lost for not using different camera angles. These scenes are shot from 2 or 3 angles at a time, so these flashbacks could have been seen from those different angles and not what we saw on the TV screen. But they didn't do it. Deanna remembered, oh that's right, Riker's kind of a slut, that's why I broke up with him in the first place. I'll never marry him in the future, will I? Of course, her fiancé dumped her for a blonde on a plague ship. She doesn't get the greatest of guys, does she? Riker is whoring himself out for information, so -1 point. More inappropriate activity with the locals, so -1 more point. Happy thoughts aren't working, so they're gonna make Riker have nightmares now. 1 point lost for only having flashbacks from the last 2 years. He's been in Starfleet for like 15 now. This is a traumatic scene for Deanna, not Riker, so -1 point. 1 point lost here. You would never have one Starfleet officer on a Klingon ship. 1 point lost for an obvious stunt double, and 1 point lost because Riker moved while he was unconscious. Deanna and Dr. Pulaski worked together one last time. How often did you see Deanna work with Dr. Crusher? Sadly, Merritt Buttrick died just a few months before Shades of Grey aired. Riker sings his favorite Who song. 1 point lost. Riker is under the oil, so he wouldn't see it from this angle. 1 point lost. Riker was not in the transporter to see this, and he was not on the bridge, so -1 more point. 1 point is lost for not having the Pegasus incident or another secret mission as part of his memories. I can't take a point for the Klingons, but I can take a point for Picard and Tasha on the bridge because Riker wasn't there. Riker wasn't in the transporter room either, so -1 point, and again another bridge scene, so -1 more point. And -1 point here for each flashback clip that they do that you really don't want to see, which comes out to a whopping 18 flashback clips in just 1 minute, which means this show lost 18 points all at once. Dr. Pulaski saves Commander Riker, but the camera takes one last look at Deanna's cleavage, so -1 point. Pulaski talks like a Vulcan computer. The show ends on a funny note, and this is the last time you see Dr. Pulaski on Star Trek The Next Generation. Aww. Today, we say goodbye to the wonderful Diana Muldaur, who got to be in 2 original episodes and 20 here as Dr. Pulaski. Unfortunately, she didn't have that great of a time on the show since her character replaced Dr. Crusher, who was fired, and in her early shows she looked down on Data. But she ended up being his ally frequently. However, she will be missed, and her presence makes Season 2 unique. She has 100 screen credits, most notably McCloud, The Incredible Hulk, and L.A. Law. And most important of all, Kate did Worf. Yes! So what happened in Season 2? An alien had sex with Deanna, Nagilum killed Haskell, Pulaski scores with Moriarty, Okana scores with everyone, Deanna scores with Riva, Data scores with Kareen, Pulaski gets old, Riker gets Klingon, Picard scores with Philippa, Wesley scores with Celia, the computer gets a virus, Mickey D scores with Rita, Picard sees himself, Pulaski scores with Riker's dad, Data abducts an alien child, Q scores with Guinan, Geordi scores with Ensign Gomez, Riker scores with an Irish girl, Mrs. Troy scores with a hologram, Worf scores with Kalar, Data scores against Klorami, and Riker gets eaten by a plant. So why did she call the show sexist? The top 3 of Season 2, Loud as a Whisper, Pen Pals, and Manhunt, and the bottom 3, The Royale, were Silence Has Lease and Shades of Grey. Shades of Grey, a terrible flashback show for a season finale, and after the writer's strike, the loss of 2 female characters, and a shorter season, I thought this meant the series was cancelled. But it limped through and made it for a 3rd season, and this show gets a score of 34. Thanks for viewing. Be sure to leave comments below and click that like button, the share button, the subscribe button, and I'll see you again real soon.